Hello, crafting friends. I'm Dorene Decibus from It Begins with Ink and Paper, and welcome to Simply Stamping Sunday. I had to think for a minute which one I was going to be doing first, but yes, it is Simply Stamping Sunday. I probably should have started with the 12 days of Halloween, and then Simply Stamping Sunday would have been closer to being on time, but I didn't think that way. So as I said in the post, I'm coming early because it's all about the roux. I have a huge crock pot full of broccoli and cheddar soup, though it doesn't have the roux yet, and it doesn't have the cheddar in it yet. And at the time that right in the middle of these two lives would have been when I needed to go and make the roux. And there are some things I'll let my husband do, but making a roux and a cheese sauce is not one of them. So I want the soup to be edible. So that's why I am on early tonight, so that I have time to do that roux. So this is our last week of the Caring Leaves stamp set, and I am going to be doing 2 fun folds for you tonight. And you know, I've had so much fun with this set. I'm sorry that we missed last week, but like I said, I've just had so much fun with it, and especially since it's only a $17 set, that I just feel like I've got my money's worth with this one. Hi, Angela. Happy Sunday to you, too. I don't know about you up north, but it was pretty cold here today. The wind was just making it so much cold. I don't know. You might even have snow now up north. You'll have to let us know in the chat. So let's start with the first card. This is the first card we're going to be making. It opens like this. Like I said, tonight's a fun fold. Let me talk about this designer series paper and the two-tone cardstock I'll be using. So this is called the Sweet Days of Autumn. It is actually one of the scrapbooking papers. So it comes with multiple sheets, and they're both double-sided, as you can see. And I am going to be showing you at least all 3 sheets tonight so that you can see how they work. And then we have this green one with the rust on the background. And I had a little bit of the two-tone cardstock that goes with this particular sweet set of designer series paper, but I didn't have enough to make the exact same card. So for each one, I'm making the same card, the same fold, but I'm making it a little different so that I can use so in this one I have the Peacock two-tone, and when you open it up, you can see that it's lighter on the inside than it is on the outside. I can show it like that so that you can see that. Maybe that's a little better. And I'm using, to accent it, the Cajun Craze. And then on the card I'm going to make, I'm just reversing that so that I'll have both. So what I've done is I have a piece of cardstock that measures 5.5 by 8.25. Now, measured this way, when you close the card, there is an opening, and I came up with an idea for that opening. I didn't like just having the very vanilla cardstock showing, so I turned over and used the lighter shade of the Cajun Craze, so that when you close the card, that fills that little gap where it would be the very vanilla. And then I used some of the pecan paper to put behind the greeting, and I used a little piece of the designer series paper on the side. Once my roux is made, I will be putting all of the measurements in the comments. And then for ink, I'm just using Early Espresso, Cajun Craze, and Pecan Pie. So let's get this one started. All right. So I have here my piece of 5.5 by 8.25 piece of cardstock. Remember, the two-tone cardstock is actually just a little bit, it's not the same weight as our other cardstock, so I'll just say that as a bit of a warning. And that is just something that you have to be aware of when you're doing your just looking for my sheet. I'm sorry about that. It's just something you have to be aware of when you're doing your putting your card together, that you want to make sure you have some cardstock in there so that it has enough weight. Okay, so let me just look at this to remind myself at what I did the measurements at. So it's 1 inch and 5 1/4. Yep, that's right. So I'm going to score this at 1 inch and at 5 1/4. That's all I need to do. I can decide whether or not I want to use the lighter side or the darker side. So I am going to actually have the lighter side on the inside and the darker side on the outside. And so I'm just going to make those folds. There we go. Now, I wondered why, when I was watching the video learning how to make this fun fold, why they didn't have that 8 1/2 piece of cardstock, because they didn't address the gap here. So I think if you went to the 8 1/2, you just would have a smaller gap. You'd have to score at 1 1/4 instead of 1 inch, but it would take the gap pretty much away. All right, so let's just set that one aside. So what I have for the rest of my cardstock, I do have a piece of 4 by 5 1/4, very vanilla, and that's going to go on the inside. I am going to do a little stamping. Then I have a piece that measures 2 3/4 by 5 1/4, and I'm going to be doing my stamping on that. Then I have our opposite piece of what I did in the last card, and this measures, 2 7/8 by 5 3/8, and this is going to just layer right on that and be layered right on the front. And then I have 3/4 of an inch by 3 inches, and is this just 1/4 of an inch? No, it's 3/8 of an inch by 3 1/2 inches. So it's just a 1/2 inch bigger for the greeting. And then for that side panel, I have 7/8 by 5 3/8, and that's going to be our little side piece over here. All right, let's start and do some stamping. So I'm going to start with the greeting. I am using from the Everyday Greetings, the Thinking of You, and I'm going to stamp that in Early Espresso. And with this particular greeting, it like literally just fits on this because of the font. So we'll set that aside. Then on my inside, oops, I forgot a piece. Where did my piece of, well, I didn't bring over a piece. There is one more piece we need. Let me just grab it. If I need to cut it, I can. I cut one, but I don't know what I did with it. We also need the piece that's going to go right down here. And just before, so I don't forget, this is going to be I think I did 3/4 of an inch on the last one. So we're going to do 3/4 of an inch by 5 1/4. If that's too long, I'll just trim it when it's time to put it on. So it's just a little too long, but I want to add a stamp on this. So I am going to take both stamps. I'm going to use that for the outline. I'll need both outlines. I am going to use Cajun Craze for the larger leaf. And I'm just going to stamp that partially on. And then I am going to use the pecan pie and stamp that partially on. There we go. Then I'm going to use the outlines and use that in Early Espresso. So I'm just going to line that up. And you can see I got some of the Early Espresso over tissue to just take that off so we don't get ink somewhere where we don't want it tonight. And then I am going to add the other outline. So this is coming from the top of the page. Hi, Lynn. And I'm going to add this little border piece. Now, before I adhere this all the way, I just want to make sure I've got that in the right place so that when we close the card, it's going to do what I want it to do to that opening. And it needs to be just a little bit. Let me just make sure. Yeah, it's a little off. So we'll just bring that over just a tad more. And now that should work the way I want it to. Perfect. And then I'll just trim that little bit of extra off of the top with my snips. And then I'm going to just use my, it's always right in front of me. And then just make sure this goes in where it should. There we go. Okay, that part of the card is done. We're going to add this little flap, and then we're going to do some stamping. So this is just an 1/8 of an inch smaller, and that's going to go on that side. Panel over here. There we go. So that's the first part of the card all set and done. So now let's do our stamping. So I'm just going to take a scrap piece of paper and put down so that I don't get ink all over the spot, all over the place. And what I'm going to do is just randomly stamp some images. So I'm going to start with the larger leaf. Start with one sort of in the middle, and then I'm just going to turn it and stamp, and then I'm going to get my next image, wipe off. I've got so much ink on me today, it's amazing. And then I'm going to use the pecan pie with the smaller one. Again, turning the leaf in lots of different directions. There we go. That looks good. Well, maybe I'll put just another piece right there. So now I'm going to use the Early Espresso to do two different things. I'm going to start by doing my two-step stamping with the pecan pie first. And with this stamp set, I just try to line up the stem and the veins as best I can. It's okay if you're not perfect. There is no leaf in the world that is perfect. Okay, so the small one's done. Let's do our larger leaf. And then we're just going to fill in some of those spaces. I have to say, I really hate having, when I'm doing this kind of stamping, making my own designer series paper, I don't like to have a lot of empty spaces. So I like to use a splatter background. And then I have a funny story to tell you. The splatter background I'm using, I have no idea what stamp set it comes from. I mounted it once and then just started using it over and over again and never unmounted it. And so now it's just my go-to background splatter. So I'm going to stamp it at different strengths. That way my splatter is not all the same. So there we go. It's pretty with just two different colors of leaves. You don't have to do a ton of colors if you don't want to. So now I'm going to take the pecan pie and put this right on. Well, we're going to change the Stampin' seal. So just a hint, when you're changing your Stampin' seal, I always check the top edges to make sure there's not an abundance of adhesive there. You don't want that to build up in between refills. I feel like I need to take all of my adhesive containers and just run them through some soapy water and get them, maybe use some Goo Be Gone and get all the adhesive that's built up over the years off of them. But they still work pretty well. Okay, so this is going to go right here. And then we're going to put this on the front. So like I said, these are exactly the same card, just using two different card bases. And now we just have to add our greeting. So I'm going to add some adhesive right down the middle. And then I'm just going to place this on the back. Looks pretty good. If it's not perfectly even, you can always just trim one of the edges to make it so. And then I'm going to take some dimensionals right here. I knew I had them somewhere. And what I'm going to do is they're only going to go on one side. So when I put this across, and I went low on the last one, I think I'll go, do I want to go high or low? I think I'll still do low. So I'm only going to put the dimensionals on just a little bit, not a little over half, so it doesn't close the card permanently. So we'll put it right here. If you do get a tad of the, I just have a tiny, tiny bit of the oh, I dropped it. I have powder all over my computer. So if you ever do get some extra, you have a little bit of a dimensional showing, just use your Emboss Buddy, and because it has all that powder in it, and will take the adhesive away. So there is our first card. So we have it in the two coordinating colors, but it's exactly the same card. Okay, let's go on to card number 2. So this card, I actually decided to make this card again. I made it with a Halloween for one of the 12 days of Halloween, but I forgot to do this fold over. So I wanted to make it again so I could show you the right way to make it. And then when I made this one, I cut it so my trees were upside down. So I had to make it a little bit off, though this is closer to what the card is supposed to look like. So this is going to be a thank you card. And for this one, I used the checkered brown, the pecan, with, it has a little bit of petal pink in it, so I accent it with petal pink. And then when you open it up to the tree side, you have all of these different, you have the pecan, the petal pink, the Cajun Craze, both the Mossy Meadow and the old olive, and you've got some crushed curry as well. So it has all of those different colors in it. So this should really, the card should really look like this. But you can also see if you make this kind of silly mistake, you just turn it the other way. So I don't know how I made this next card, how I cut this designer series paper, but we'll find if I get to actually do this correctly. Okay, so piece of distressed green with just a really pretty design on it. And then on the other side, it's the Cajun Craze. So it is measured at 12 by 4 inches, and I scored it at 3 1/4, 8 1/2, and 11 1/4. And I am going to want the green to be on the outside. So I'm going to fold these two, and I can see I cut it wrong. I cut it wrong again. So this will be just like I just did, because it's going to have my inside pattern upside down. So when you're doing this, you want to make sure you've got your inside pattern the way you want it to be before you cut it. If you use a pattern that doesn't matter, then that is great. So I will be doing it this way just like I did the other one, and that way we'll have everything be lined up perfectly. So I need for this a piece of 5 1/4 by 4 1/2. Excuse me, let me start again. I need a piece that's 5 1/2 by 4 1/4, and then I took a 1/4 inch off, so this is 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. And so I am going to just attach those two together, and I do want the darker side. So we'll just attach this to the piece of old olive, and I'm putting it on, I believe, the old olive. Just make sure this is straight before I attach it. And then this is the lighter old olive side on the back. All right, this piece is going to get folded over and sealed. and it is going to go on to the front of the card. Now, on a card like this, when you're using just designer series paper, and in this case I'm using you just want to make sure you have at least, this is getting pretty good, but it's still not the same level I like it at. So by adding that piece of Very Vanilla, it's going to give it some of that strength that I'm looking for. Okay, so let's do some stamping. So again, I'm going to take out my scrap paper. So this is the inside, and I'm also going to need to clean my stamps because I couldn't use the same color. I can't use the same color since this is green. I can use the Cajun Craze, which I will, and I will still use the Early Espresso. But we'll just get them all cleaned, so we're starting fresh and no extra ink around to get in our way. Okay, so this piece is just going to be a bunch of the smaller stamps, and I am going to do them. I think what we're going to do, we're not going to use the Early Espresso. We're going to use Old Olive and Mossy Meadow, and we are going to use the Old Olive to stamp all of our images. So I am using just the smaller stamps. Smaller stamp on this one. So I'm just going to, again, it's like making my own designer series paper. Just going in all directions. Adding initial images where I think they need to be just to fill up the space. Then I am going to take the outline and I'm going to use the darker green, the Mossy Meadow, one of my favorite greens. The Old Olive will fade a little bit as it dries. So right now you're not really seeing a lot of contrast, but as both of them fade and get to their color, you'll be able to see that contrast. I'll hold it up for you in just a minute. Okay, one more. So it's not as strong as a contrast as the browns were, but you can see as you look at it closely, a little bit closer, you can see the contrast. So now what I'm going to do is just like I did before, though I'm going to stamp off first, and then I'm going to add a little bit of that stamped image, but in the greens. Okay, there we go. Oops, I'm going to leave this open for just a second because I do want to stamp on the inside. So I am going to take my Old Olive, and this time I'm going to stamp one on full strength and then off to have it look like it's sitting on top of each other. Then I will take the Mossy Meadow and add the stem and the veins. And that's what that looks like on the inside. All right. And lastly, we're going to stamp the thank you on the label, but we're going to stamp it in and I'm going to take my snips and just cut one diagonal corner off, and I'm going to cut a little this side off. There we go. Okay, let's put this together. It's almost already all together. Someday I'll show you how to make this card correctly with it coming the right way, but it's still a cool fold this way. I really like it, and I would rather have it this way than having all the patterns be upside down. So this is going to go on the inside. That will close. This is going to go here. I am going to be centering this on the card front, but I'm only going to be putting my dimensionals from this point down. So let me grab those. There we go. Trying to have a little spot to put all my little pieces of paper in hopes that they don't all end up on the floor. Does anyone else have that issue when you're stamping and pulling off your dimensionals, and if you leave them in a little pile on your desk, before you know it, they're down on the floor? So I'm trying to keep all these little pieces on my desk, and so I found this little pail. Just a cute little thing to put it in. Hi, Bonnie. And now I can center this, and I don't have to worry about any of the dimensional showing. I'm going to take the Stampin' seal on that side, and I'm going to attach this like that, and there is our second fun fold and our last card for the Caring Leaves. So let's go over what we made tonight. So I think this is the one we made, but this was my sample, just different background colors. So we have this fun fold that opens like that and has that piece inside to fill up that void of the very vanilla cardstock. This was my first one that I made for my sample using a different piece of the designer series paper, again based on what I had left for the from the two-tone cardstock, what I had left, and here is the second one that I made with more greens. So I hope you enjoyed these fun folds tonight. I am going to be back, and I just need to clean up this so that we can make, so I can go live again to make our next our 12 Days of Halloween card that I'm going to be making tonight. And it's a fun fold, and it is such a cute card. So I'll be back in a few minutes, and so hang tight, don't go anywhere, and I'll see you soon. So good night from now. Next Sunday night, I am going to be using V, are you ready? Because this is such a great set. I am going to be using the Peaceful Evergreens and the Peaceful Season, and we are going to focus on some Christmas cards for the month of November. Yes, Bonnie, I was early tonight. I explained at the beginning of the video, I came on early because I have soup cooking in the kitchen and I needed to go on a half hour early so I could make the roux and add all of that. So, but I will be back for the next video in just a few minutes. So sorry about that. I posted, but I didn't post early enough. So this is what we'll be using next month. Okay,